So about a week or so ago, Josh Jacobs made it clear that he would welcome Davante Adams coming back to Green Bay and that it would depend on the price. And now we have another Packers player also attempting to convince Davante to come to Green Bay. Keyshawn Nixon tweeted yesterday, "Yo Tay," he then tags him. He says, "Pull back up." And so it's not a surprise that these Packers players want Davante to come back to Green Bay. I think that this Packers team, if they really want to compete for a Super Bowl, I think adding a few different veterans on both sides of the ball, receiver potentially as well as defensively, I think that could really take this team over the top. And I think that they could be a few pieces away from being a very competitive team, depending on who those pieces are. And I think the big question for Davante is this something Brian Gutekunst would want to do? Because if we look back at the history between Davante Adams and Brian Gutekunst, before Davante Adams got traded away to the Las Vegas Raiders, the offseason before I think it was the 2021 season started, both Rodgers and Davante Adams thought that the Packers had lowballed Adams with their contract offer before the 2021 season. And then eventually the Packers did make a better offer, but at that point it was too late. And I was reading through a Matt Schneidman article from October of 2023, and it sort of pointed out some of those facts. And so I think when you look at the way that things ended with Davante and the Packers, it maybe wasn't on the best of terms. It does seem that since that point, things have smoothed over. Here's a quote from Davante from Matt Schneidman's article, October of 2023. He says, "We ended in a good place," Adams said after practice Thursday, 4 days before the Packers and Raiders play on Monday Night Football. "I still, not frequently, but I still speak to the front office guys over there," Adams said. "I checked in on Matt LaFleur in the offseason, hit him on his birthday. All the coaches over there I love, the ones that are still there. The players, obviously, they understood the situation as well. So it wasn't some big crazy breakup that people thought it was. Obviously, it felt like it just because everything seemed good a week ago, and then obviously I was gone. But a lot of love and respect, mutual love and respect between the Packers and I." And so it seems that, when the Packers lowballed Davante Adams before the 2021 season, that probably was where there was some frustration where Davante, he thought he was valued more. And I understand where if your organization offers you a deal where you just think is way too low, I could see how you could potentially see that as, maybe not valuing yourself as you think that, the team that you've played for a long time should value you. But it does sound like when it went down and he got traded away, there weren't a ton of, hard feelings to one another. And so I think for me, I'm all for the Packers not even trading. The Jets will probably release him because he's like a $38 million cap hit. Now with Rodgers not coming back, I doubt Davante wants to stay. And they saved $29 million by cutting Davante Adams. And so odds are they're going to cut him, so they wouldn't have to trade anything for him. So I'm all in for the Packers signing Davante Adams. The big question, as always, is how much would it cost? I just think that with Davante being the Packer legend that he was while he was here, I just think it's a perfect situation for the Packers, who could use a veteran receiver, for Davante, who I think Packers fans would be willing to welcome back to Green Bay at 32 years old. And so me personally, as a Packers fan, I would love to see Davante back in a Packers jersey. And it would be fun to watch him and Jordan Love, because that's something we could have potentially seen if Davante decided to stay in Green Bay. He, of course, wanted to leave. But I think that getting a guy who's that consistent, that reliable, still playing at a very high level, I think it would be a great fit for the Packers to bring him in. The question is, how much money does he want, and would he want to come back to Green Bay? That's sort of the big question. There was some information that came out from Jeremy Fowler a few days ago where he said the Jets must address the future of receiver Davante Adams, whose $38 million cap hit is untenable. A source told me Adams is intrigued by a return to the West Coast and would be open to potentially joining teams such as the Rams or Chargers if he gets released. I'll put the 49ers in the conversation, too. Adams grew up in Northern California. So I'm not sure if he's only intrigued by the West Coast teams. I would assume maybe there's a part of him that could be intrigued by coming back to Green Bay. And I feel like as a player that started off his career in Green Bay, became the receiver that we all know him as today in Green Bay, it would be nice to have him come back to Green Bay. So I'm all for it. Maybe the Packers could get him on a 15 to 20 million one-year deal because he is getting up there in age. I think that could be potential option. It all comes down to, though, does the Packers front office want to bring Davante back in? Because for a long time, we've seen the Packers be willing to move off of veteran receivers before maybe they thought they should move on from Green Bay. And looking back at, Aaron Rodgers, when he was here, he brought up the way that the Packers treated veterans when they went out. Didn't seem to think they treated them as great as they should be treated. And I think we even saw it with Aaron Jones last year. Packers decided to move on from him. Well, first off, they basically offered him a 50% pay cut. And then he decides to sign for about $1 million or so more with the Minnesota Vikings. And so I just don't know if the Packers would bring him back in, because then you have to factor in, okay, how is he going to exit Green Bay? How much longer does Davante want to play? If he wants to play another 5 years, I don't think that Brian Gutekunst would want Davante on the Packers for 5 years, because at some point he's going to get older. At some point, any NFL player starts to decline. The Packers typically move on from them before that happens, which I think from a business perspective is wise. And so you have to factor that in if you're the Packers. How long does Davante want to stay in the NFL? Because you don't want another situation where maybe Davante wants to stay longer, the Packers don't want him, and then once again you have to move on from him. So I think they'd have to figure out that perspective. And I was trying to look back to see, were there any other receivers who left Green Bay who ended up coming back? And the one that did happen was James Jones back in 2015. He left the year prior, played for the Raiders, and then he becomes available. Jordy Nelson tore his ACL that August. The Packers decided to call up James Jones and bring him back. And so it seemed that because Jordy went down, they brought in James Jones, but they did bring him back to Green Bay for his final season in the league. And so I would love for Davante to end his career in Green Bay, maybe come and play for 2 years. And I think that with the Packers' needs and maybe with needing some more consistency, Davante Adams would 100% bring that. So I would have to guess it's not going to happen, just because I feel like Brian Gutekunst, already traded him away. Would he bring him back again? I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on it. But those are my thoughts. If you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.